Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Nice to see you all. I hope you're doing well. And that you feel inspired to listen to another teaching with a meditation. So I know that many people come in the last minute, or actually just after the last minute. So we'll start with setting a motivation, bringing our mind to the present moment so that the mind is calm and focused and more capable of taking in what we are talking about. So as a start, make sure that you sit comfortable. And most likely your mind is busy or has a feeling of busyness due to all the activities that you have been doing so far. Maybe you want to take a few deep in-breaths, and then when you breathe out, you visualize that you let go of whatever has been happening today, whatever has been keeping your mind busy. You all let it go when you breathe out. And when you do that, you become aware of your breath. And maybe with that, you become aware of your body. And your body is always at the present moment. When you can bring your mind to your body, your mind is also at the present moment. And in the present moment, delusions cannot arise. Which means that the mind naturally becomes more calm, more clear, more peaceful, and also more focused. The coming 1.5 hours, you do not have to do anything. In the sense that the only thing that you allow yourself to do is to listen, to reflect, to think about what we're talking about. You give yourself permission to just stay focused on the topic. Not to think about what happened before, not to think about what is going to happen after. Just stay with what we are doing right now. Like you take a little holiday from samsara. And then we can set up a motivation. For the session today, where we talk about self-compassion, becoming friends with oneself. And when we practice Mahayana Buddhism, we try to make each and every action that we do for the benefit of all sentient beings. That means that we keep our heart open, and it also means that the result of our action is going to be very powerful. So any benefit that comes from listening to the teachings is going to be very powerful. So how do we do that? We can think that by learning about taking care of ourselves, by learning about how we can be compassionate with ourselves, by learning about how we can free ourselves from suffering and how we can find happiness in a way that it is not limited to this life, but in a way that it is going to help us on our way of developing our wisdom and compassion to full capacity. So to develop such compassion for oneself, we need to do that. First, realize our suffering. We need to realize the depth of suffering. And then we first need to generate that wish, I want to be free from this. Only after that can we look around and see all sentient beings and think, wow, they're all experiencing the same thing as I do. And they all crave for happiness and they all want to be free from suffering. So then after that, I generate the mind that I'm going to help each and every sentient being to become free from suffering. But to have a realistic mind, to have a mind based on the reality, we need to have the knowledge about suffering and we need to have the wish to free ourselves as well. So that's why we're going to listen today. And so before we go into new material today, I will go a little bit through what we did yesterday. So yesterday we talked about how to create the causes for being free from suffering and how to create the causes for happiness. And so what we said is that in order to do that, we have to be aware of our actions. If we go on our automatic pilot and we just follow our feelings, then what we are doing is all for me. It is all based on our own benefit. And it is these actions then naturally, some lamas say they can only become causes for suffering. So if we want to change that, we have to become more aware of what is going on in our body, in our mind, and we have to become more aware of our actions. So we have to be mindful of the actions that we are doing with our body. We have to be mindful of the actions that we are doing with verbally, with our speech. And we need to have knowledge what kind of actions are beneficial, what kind of actions are harmful. And so with our rational mind, we need to hold that knowledge. And then we feel the emotions coming up, and maybe you want to run away from something or towards something. And then the rational mind has to catch you and say, oh, but that's going to cause you a lot of suffering. Maybe you can do it different. So that mindfulness of the present moment, of what you are doing, what is going in your mind, is very important in order to start changing causes for happiness and causes for being free from suffering. So then we stop creating the causes for suffering by abstaining from creating non-virtuous actions or harmful actions. And we said that the main thing that makes your action harmful is your motivation. If you have a harmful intent, that is what is causing you to experience suffering in the future. And I think also in the moment itself, you know, when the mind is really occupied with malice, with wanting other beings to suffer, we are not happy. It's a very unhappy mind, right? And then when we engage in actions, that mind is even more unhappy. So if we can abstain from that, first you abstain from physical actions, then what more difficult to abstain from is first you abstain from the physical actions, then you try to abstain also from the verbal actions, and then you also try to change your mind, not having any harmful intent anymore. So that will stop experiencing suffering in samsara. You know, the suffering experiences, not all of them, because the fact that we are born, we will experience the sufferings of birth and aging and sickness and death. But the better you create causes for happy experiences, for pleasant experiences, and abstain from non-virtue, even these experiences become less in the nature of suffering, or they become less an unpleasant experience. You know, we see, for instance, people who go through life without ever getting sick. You know, that is a sign of having created a lot of causes for happiness and not many causes for suffering in terms of experiencing sickness. And so then what we said is, in order to create the causes for happiness, we need to engage in virtuous actions, actions that are beneficial for others. When we do that, we create the causes for ourselves to experience pleasant feelings in the future. But we said, even in the present moment, when we engage in these actions, that goes together with experiencing pleasant feelings. And so we need to keep creating causes for that, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get out of cyclic existence, because only then are we completely free from suffering. And so that is not going to happen overnight. We have to undo our conditioned existence. We have to, and that goes slowly, 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 like peeling the onion or undoing the spiral. Yeah. So that takes time. And while we do that, that is not an easy path, right? If it was easy, then so many people had already done that before. So it is not an easy path. And in order to be able to sustain yourself, in order to keep having the courage and the resources and everything that you need in order to practice, you need happy feelings to be able to keep doing it. If you feel totally miserable, it's like it is impossible to practice the path. You first have to have some kind of pleasantness that you experience in your life. And then you can say, now I'm going to practice difficult things. If you're already miserable, you cannot practice anything that is difficult. Right? So we need to create causes for happy feelings. So we engage in virtuous actions to create a cause for that. And then what we said is that the other cause of suffering, besides our actions, our karma, is our delusions. So in order to lessen our delusions, we apply antidotes to the delusions. And so yesterday I had to go, I do not have the time to go into all the details, but there are, you can find plenty of books. You can read the Lamrim books where you find information on this. And courses that are about transforming problems, they help you also to see the disadvantages of the disturbing emotions. And so we lessen the delusions with applying the antidotes. And then eventually what we want to do, we want to totally eliminate all the delusions from the mind. And we said the delusions are based on the self-grasping mind, the mind that holds the self to exist in a way that is totally opposite to reality. When we can see reality as it is, the moment we see that, the moment we realize the emptiness of the self that we are grasping at, from that moment, the delusions cannot arise anymore in the way they arose before. Impossible. It's like you take the basis for all the delusions, you take it away. They have, there are still some delusions, but they are so much less strong. And once you have seen the nature of reality, you simply do not believe your delusions anymore. You can say, oh yeah, that is attachment, but I know that attachment is deceiving me. I do not need to follow that. Once we cut through the root of our conditioned existence, we can be free from our disturbing emotions. We are not slaves anymore. We are not controlled anymore by the disturbing emotions. So then real freedom comes. And that freedom comes with an incredible happy feeling. It's like standing on this mountain, this big mountain top, and seeing this blue sky. It's like so much freedom to breathe. So I think something similar might happen when we cut the root of cyclic existence and experience the freedom from the delusions. So then yesterday we also spoke about how to be with the unpleasant feelings with self-compassion. And we talked about 3 aspects that we try to apply. And these coming from Kristen Neff. She's a psychologist in America. And she has done extensive research to how to develop self-compassion. So she says, if we, instead of being harsh to ourselves or beating ourselves up, we speak kindly to ourselves, that already diminishes so much of our suffering. So kind self-talk. And then it is important that we are mindful of the experience. So we bring the mind to whatever we are experiencing. And then we need to remember that whatever we experience, it is not something personal. It is actually a shared human experience. Right? Things that happen to human beings. If we fail in something, we have little self-compassion, it's very easy for us to think, I didn't do the right thing. Something is wrong with me. It's all because of me. But if we start seeing, well, that's just part of life. Sometimes we are successful, sometimes we are not successful. That is just part of life. Everyone around us experiencing similar things. There is no one who is only successful. And in actuality, those who are most successful have had many failings before they came to their success. And so it is not about you. It is just an experience. And so by doing that, we create conditions for the mind to process the unpleasant feelings more easy and to totally experience that unpleasantness. And once we allow the mind to experience that, that feeling arises in the mind and then dissolves naturally back into the mind. The feeling is gone. The experience is finished. And then we can move on with life. What we often do is that we, with our aversion, with our maybe our anger, we do not allow unpleasant feelings to arise. We say, oh no, I don't want that. And then we start beating ourselves up and we actually add to our suffering instead of lessen our suffering. Maybe we try to hide it. So if we can find a situation where we allow the feelings to arise, they come naturally to their height and then they dissolve back into the mind. Just like all the pleasant feelings, they come and go. Nothing can stay in the mind forever. But it is important that when feelings arise, that they really get to their peak, because otherwise they cannot dissolve naturally back into the mind. So with these three aspects, the kind self-talk, the mindfulness, and thinking about shared human experience, we try to create a situation in which we can allow unpleasant feelings to arise so that they can naturally dissolve back into the mind. And then it's finished. So when we develop self-compassion like that, then that self-compassion becomes a protector, not based on an emotional reaction of aversion, but it is based on wisdom and compassion. You know, if you have really strong self-compassion, then you understand suffering. Not only your own suffering, but you can also understand the suffering of others. You can put things in perspective. You can let things slide off you more easily. So self-compassion can protect you from a lot of suffering that we are at the moment inflicting on ourselves. So then there were a few questions that are related to this. So I will try to answer that. So somebody asked, you know, about these unpleasant feelings when they arise. So normally we either suppress them, or sometimes we feel like if I can act out, for instance, if I can go to the beach and scream, or if I would hit on something with my fist, then I feel a relief, you know, and that is true. When there is strong anger in the mind, and then we have a forceful action that can give you the feeling of relief. Now I feel better, you know, but we have to investigate if that really brings you benefit. If we act out, we have a temporary relief, but the unpleasant feeling hasn't completely gone yet. So you might have to do it again and again and again and again. I had a friend of mine, she said she did something like that again and again and again and again. But deep down inside, there was still so much anger. And I think no matter how much you do it, you never can get the anger out just with that. You just have the temporary relief. And what you also have is that you create a habit of needing to react with some kind of action. I have a dog coming here to me. Hello. The Tushita dog. What I'm going to do is, if I need that relief in order to feel okay, you know, then we create a habit. I need to do this in order to feel relief. And so we actually can create a habit of reacting with anger. I once heard a story from students from Chogyam Trungpa. Maybe you have heard of him. He had a group of students coming to him, and I think this was in the 70s, where people would work with, let your aggression out. You have to hit the pillow, or you have to, they did other things in order to allow that energy to come out. So that group came to him to meditate, and I think they had kind of a week retreat. And so after a couple of days sitting with their feelings, they got really like, I have to do something, I have to hit, or I have to scream, and he said, no, just sit. And they got so crazy of the feelings that were coming up because they couldn't let it out. And only after that started to subside. And then they could see the unpleasant feelings. And they could also see that, oh, I do not need to scream in order for feelings to go away. I just need to know how I let them arise in the mind, so that then they can dissolve back into observe them. Then if strong anger comes with that, you can also observe your anger. There is a lot of anger in the mind. But you do not become the anger. You're not identifying with the anger. That's what we try. But we need some practice, in order to learn that. So somebody said, I have not been listening to my feelings for a long time. I have just rationally done things, and now I feel actually very unhappy with that. So it sounded like, so now I'm going to listen to my feelings again. And I think Buddhism is not talking about listening to the feelings is not good, and therefore you need to do something just on the rational basis. But what you're doing is you're also not following blindly your feelings. What you're trying to do is to wake up to the nature of reality, to the nature of your feelings, to the nature of your being. And then develop your wisdom mind, your mind that understands how feelings work, how actions work. And then you try to apply that knowledge. And that knowledge, yes, that's coming from the rational mind, but you're not just going to live on a rational level, right? You try to bring the feelings and the rational mind together. If you strongly feel that you want to do something, you can always do it. There's no one who says you're not allowed to do anything. You making your own choices. But everything comes at a cost. And so you can take that. It's not a problem. I mean, this is what we do all the time, So, but what you can do is you can slowly change the direction of your motivation, change the direction of your actions, change the way how you relate to the feelings, so that you do not necessarily have. But that is a slow process. We cannot do that overnight. And so then somebody asked, sometimes I have feelings that are so overwhelming. And I spoke about develop a container of loving kindness where you hold yourself and where you allow yourself to experience whatever you are experiencing. And that can be difficult. How do I do that? So it can take time to develop that. Sometimes when we don't have that container, we might be very judgmental to ourselves, which means that we have never given ourselves any space to feel negative things. So that now we get in trouble, because now we're going to allow ourselves to feel it, but we do not know how to hold ourselves in that. So I give you some kind of ideas, but it will take time to develop. So I think very important is that you try to accept yourself as you are, and try to accept yourself where you are at. Sometimes we have these huge expectations of ourselves. I have to do this, I have to do this, I should do this, I should do this. But we might not be there yet. And so then when we try to live up to these expectations, we actually start to disconnect from where we really are, which means we are not accepting ourselves where we really are. So going back, this is where I am right now. And making peace with that and being okay with that. That's very important. And then be kind and gentle with yourself, especially when you don't live up to your own expectations. Maybe you should adjust your expectations and bring them more in accordance with what you can do realistically. Be kind and gentle, don't judge, develop loving kindness for yourself, and be willing to connect with the experience. Sometimes we can have the feeling there is so much pain or so much anger or so much something that is so difficult to digest. Start with, I do not have to fully experience that whole overwhelming feeling or reaction in one go, but I'm willing to connect with it. I'm willing to learn from it. I'm willing to observe it, even if it is from a distance. Sometimes we have feelings in our body that we feel that has to come out. There is something that needs to come out, but I'm scared of it. So you look from a distance and approach it. Don't go straight into it, but just approach it and say, I'll be with you for a while. And I'm going to be mindful of what I'm feeling without having to do anything. And I'll do that 10 minutes, 15 minutes. In which you can experience whatever arises in the mind. Okay, let's see that we have a little unstable internet connection. If you sometimes not hear myself clearly or see myself clearly. So today we're going to look into more the psychology of a lack of self-compassion, especially to those amongst you who are people pleasers, right? For people pleasers, it's very difficult to develop self-compassion. They forget themselves and they just take care of others. So people pleasers, they have deep down inside a feeling or a belief that something like, I'm not good enough. Do you have that? If you want, you can share with me what you have. Not everyone has, I'm not good enough. Many people have something different. But it is something that gets triggered again and again and again when things happen. You feel like, oh, they're telling me again, I'm not good enough. I tried so hard, but I didn't do it well enough. I'm not good enough. Right? What is that for you? Can you share that with me? I'm going to look in the chat box if something is going to appear. What is your voice telling you? Some people feel I'm not worthy or I don't deserve. So people get value when they think, what can I do for you? That determines their value. I'm not good enough. on that. So often the people pleaser, they get their value of what they can do for others, right? And if they can't work for others, they feel like they're worthless. So we want to be accepted. We compare ourselves with others, and when we see that others are successful, we feel inadequate. So I would say you use seeing others as an excuse to feel inadequate, but I think you already feel inadequate. And seeing others being successful might reminds you of that. I'm feeling not good enough, no one loves me, and you have to do something in order to get the love from others. So it's not coming freely. So whether we deserve, whether we have the feeling I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, right? This is what is underneath all that. I'm not lovable. So if we think about babies, have you ever seen a baby who feels I'm not lovable or I'm not good enough? Have you ever seen a baby holding in like, oh no, I can't say that because otherwise something is going to happen. People are not going to love me. People are not going to like me. People don't hold back. Babies do not hold back. They live, they do whatever comes to their mind. True? We're just going to go from there. So then somewhere, something has happened that we made a conclusion, I'm not good enough. You didn't come with that. True? You came with the karma to experience that. But when you were born, that was not yet present. So then what happens, So some say that the belief I'm not good enough comes within the first 3 years of our life due to something that happens. And I'm just gonna picture you something that might happen. Of course, I cannot see in your own situation, but maybe you can apply it to your own situation if you feel the need to. So the first few years of our life, we totally depend upon others for survival, right? We need mom and dad. We need a family. We need them to take care of us. We are not able to sustain our own life. True? Then, as human beings, we have a very strong feeling for belonging. We need to be part of a group in order to feel safe, in order to feel connected, in order to feel we need that for survival, that we belong to a group. That is very old and very deep in the human psychic. And then each and every one of us has the need to feel loved. Loved unconditionally for who we are, with each and every aspect of us. Right? We have these two very strong needs, need for belonging and need to be loved. So then there is a stressful situation which happens in each and everybody's life, right? Somebody tells you that you didn't do it right. Somebody, maybe you see your parents fighting with each other and you get very scared. Or maybe your parents were so caught up with their own businesses that they didn't have enough attention for you, which means that you feel neglected, you feel not worthy of attention, you feel not worthy of being loved, right? Something that in itself happens in life, but you might have picked up a message either given to you directly or you have picked it up indirectly, coming from your situation, from your environment, maybe from a person. And what, as a child, what you do if your parents tell you you're not good enough, or you're not worthy, you cannot think, well, why doesn't my mom have time for me to take care of me or to play with me? Why is she not talking to me? What you think is, I'm not worthy. You make it your thing. First of all, because with a child, everything is about them. You know, they're the middle of the universe. So also these messages, they become very personal when we receive them in the first few years of our life. And then if we get a negative message, you know, we cannot doubt our parents because we totally depend upon them for our survival. So then in order to stay in that situation and keep your need for belonging, you abandon your own innocence. You abandon a part of yourself that knows that you're not wrong. You abandon it and you adopt a belief on the basis of your experience, which is not at all in harmony with who you are, but somehow that's the only way that you can sustain your life at that moment. Does that make sense? So whatever negative feeling that you have about yourself, I'm going to say to you, that is not coming from you. You adopted that as something from you, as a truth that you agree with. But I think you adopted that at a time that you were very vulnerable and that you saw no other option than to think like that about yourself in order to survive, in order to get everything okay in your mind. So try to think about that feeling like that. Oh, that is not mine. I took it on because somebody told me, because somebody gave me the message. But that's not who you really are. Because if that was who you really were, you were like that when you were born. I worked with babies a lot. I've never seen a baby with the feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, you know, never. So if that wasn't there when you were born, it means it's not yours. Where the feeling is, where you have the feeling I'm not good enough, underneath that feeling is a need for love, a need for belonging, a need to be part of, a need to be accepted the way you are. So if we can go to that need and acknowledge that need, and then start to find ways that we can give that to ourselves. We can heal that. If you feel I'm doing something wrong, I'm doing something wrong, I'm doing something wrong, and you're going to ask, so what you normally do in life is that you become a perfectionist and you work tirelessly, and you, in order to hear one time, you're doing it all right. The problem is, even if we hear you're doing it all right, somehow it is never touching us deep inside where we want to be touched. We think, you know, it's like tomorrow I have to start all over again. I have to do it right. I have to make sure, you know, that I'm not making any mistakes. And Because where you want to be touched, that place in your mind, you have covered that with the belief, I'm not good enough. So the only way that you can heal that, the only way you can change that belief is by really investigating it and seeing that it is not coming from you, and then changing it. And then at the same time asking yourself, and what is it that I needed to hear? What is my need? Is it the need for belonging? You know, sometimes we have this feeling, if I do not keep pleasing others, they're not going to like me anymore. Do not belong anymore. I have to keep doing what they want me to do. Otherwise, I'm not good enough. Right? You become a total slave of trying to prove the belief that you have adopted, to trying to prove that wrong. And so you prove it every time right. Oh, see, I'm not good enough. Little thing happens and we see, oh, I proved myself right. So the only way that we can change that is when you might have the feeling, oh no, if I show that from myself, you know, my need for attention, if I show that, people are not going to like me. So I won't show it. So if you don't show your need, you will never meet what you really need. You will always meet with the opposite. And so it will always hurt. Why does it hurt? Because you have disconnected from your own need. So you need to reconnect with all these needs, these aspects of yourself that you feel are not good enough, that you have abandoned as not being good enough, as not being lovable. And then it is up to you to be non-judgmental with these aspects and to embrace them and see them for what they are. Because I think most of us, we have all good intentions, you know, especially when you see little children, mostly they have good intentions. And so we need to recognize that in ourselves. Can you do something with that? The people pleaser. Reconnect with all these aspects in yourself that you believe are not good enough. And see that believing that these are not good enough is a mistake. Has no truth in and of itself. It was the opinion of somebody else. It was the impression that you got from somebody else. But it is not about you. Every aspect in you is pure by nature. And so you need to learn to see that. It's not going to help if I tell you that, right? It's not changing the mind, but it might give you the courage to look into it and then change your own mind. If we want to become a Buddha, if we want to develop our own wisdom and compassion to a limitless potential, we need each and every aspect of our mind to be fully present. We cannot say, oh, this part of me is really bad, so I won't show that, I won't do anything with that, but I'm going to develop all my good qualities. Our good qualities are the whole spectrum of our experiences that we all transform into wisdom and compassion. We're not going to leave anything out. What we need to see is that our whole mind, by nature, there is nothing wrong with that. The only thing that is wrong is that we believe there is something wrong. So this is what we need to shift. Beliefs we can change. So what about mental illness? You know, mental illness is the delusions full force, working full force. Is all based on attachment and aversion being cultivated in a very strong manner, and having lost contact with our human, no, I shouldn't say human, with our nature, with who we really are. So in case of children, there is a question. They do not expect anything. This is the question. In case of children, they do not expect anything, but then when you grow up, you are expected to perform. So what people pleasers do is that they are so sensitive for what other people want us to do. They're so sensitive for the needs of others. And what they do is they abandon their own needs, and then they start to fulfill the needs of others. That is a way of surviving. That is coming from fear. I need to make sure that my mommy is happy, because if she's not happy, she is going to give, either ignore me, or she's going to hit me, or she's going to tell me that I didn't do something right, or so I have to make sure that my mommy is happy. That's coming from fear. When you do that as a child, you're coming from fear. And there is also a lot of loving compassion there. In general, these children, they have a lot of empathy. They're very sensitive for the feelings of others. But if the situation is not safe, or there is, you experience that some part of you is not good enough, they're also very sensitive for that. Then what they do, they abandon that, and then they start pleasing you. So as a parent, if you put your own benefit before the benefit of your child, that is extremely selfish, right? Then you develop people pleasers. Then you tell the child, you're not good enough in the way you are. You're not lovable in the way you are. You need to fulfill my expectations. That's what we do a lot, but it is I think it's very selfish, and you create very unhealthy children. So if you want to change that, you have to be, as a parent, be focused on the benefit of the child. Not what a child can do for you, but what can you do for the child. I'm going to go further because I have a lot to go through today. I'm not sure if I'm going to make all that. I'll try. So when we are people pleasers, and when we work for the benefit of others from out of fear, because that is the way we survive, and then we hear the Mahayana teachings where we work for the benefit of others, and we feel like, oh, that really appeals to me, because that is, you're not aware that you have been surviving as a people pleaser, but you know how to take care of others. You love benefiting others. You want people to be happy. That's what you have been doing your whole life. So yes, Mahayana, fantastic. And then you start engaging in that. And then slowly, slowly, you start maybe getting a burnout. You start getting feelings that you feel like, oh, I shouldn't feel that, but that's not really pleasant. And you do not get everything clear in your mind. How does it work? How does it work? Benefiting for others, benefiting others. And so I think the main difference, the biggest difference is that if we grow up as people pleasers, we started taking care of others, yes, out of compassion, but also out of fear. And in the Mahayana, how we take care of others is based on wisdom and compassion, not on fear. It is based on knowing yourself as you are, on accepting each and every part of you. And with that, you learn about suffering, you learn about self-compassion, you learn about freedom from suffering, and then you're going to say, hey, I'm going to not do that just for myself, but also for the benefit of others. And then as a people pleaser, when we take care of others, we abandon our own needs. We abandon our needs and are focused upon the needs of others. Well, when we're on the Buddhist path, on the Mahayana path, when we start taking care of others, we do that in a way that we can see that by taking care of others, we at the same time fulfill all our own needs. And so if you are a people pleaser, you need to spend time to accept yourself for who you are, love yourself for who you are, reconnect with your needs, all these needs that you had abandoned, reconnect with them. And after that, am I back? Yes. Can you hear me? We had a little internet problem. Okay, great. So I think I'm going to leave it with respect to the people pleaser and being a Mahayanist. Okay. And then we're going to talk about how we can release whatever we're still holding on to. Things from the past. We're just talking about forgiveness. Okay. So forgiveness, and I'm going to tell you what I mean with forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about being okay with harmful behavior. It is not that you say to someone, oh, I forgive you, I'm all right with what happened, right? When we talk about forgiveness, does also not mean that we have to become friends with somebody who has deeply hurt us, right? That's all not needed in order to really engage in what the meaning of forgiveness is. Sometimes it can be more beneficial to stay away from people who have deeply hurt you and who cannot see that their actions are harmful. You know, it's sometimes better to say, I prefer not to stay around you because you just do not know what you're doing to me and it keeps hurting. And so I move away from you. But then forgiveness means that I mind, anger is in the mind, resentment is in the mind, all in order. These are all our attempt to not feel the unpleasant feeling that is in the mind. So this is our way of protecting ourselves from experiencing something unpleasant. Aversion and anger are trying to stop unpleasant feelings. And if you check your mind, the thoughts that arise in the mind, when there is anger, when there is strong aversion, when there is resentment, you go over an experience again and again and again, and somehow you try to change it. You wish that hadn't happened like that. You wish that person had said something different. You wish you had said something different. You keep trying to change it. And so by trying to change it, what you do is you do not allow the unpleasant feeling to arise. But instead, you're still suppressing it, trying to change it. Oh no, this cannot be true. Oh no, I do not want to feel this. Emotionally, we believe that if the anger keeps engaging, you know, going over it again and again and again, that eventually is going to free us from suffering. But if we check reality, then we can see, well, actually, that's just making things worse, right? It's not making your mind peaceful. It is your attempt to get rid of that unpleasant experience. But actually, it is upsetting your mind again and again and again. So that anger, that aversion, that resentment, what it does, it wants to separate from that unpleasant experience. But I think what it does is that it separates us from something in ourselves, and it also separates us from others. It's like a wound, you know, that we carry with us. If we haven't digested unpleasant feelings, the anger, the resentment, our attempt not to feel it makes it worse. And so we have this infestus wound inside us. And then something very little happens and it triggers that wound and we feel it all again. So how can we do things differently? You know, what we are trying to do with forgiveness is that we say, okay, this has happened in the past. I can see that I cannot change what happened in the past. The past is done. So I'm going to stop investing my anger, my aversion into the past, trying to change the past, because I cannot change the past. I have to accept that has happened to me. When we can say that has happened to me, then maybe we can feel the pain, the unpleasantness that we have not been able to feel before. because the anger stopped that. But now you say, I'm going to stop my anger. I'm not going to invest in that anymore. Now the feeling can arise. And so when the feeling arises, you are with your self-compassion. You know how to do that. And so once you have experienced that, your mind is clean, clear, and you can move on. So I think this is the essence of forgiveness, that we allow ourselves to move on, that we can say to ourselves, no matter how much I think about what happened, it's not going to change what happened. It's not going to change my pain that I experienced. It's not going to change whatever came from that experience. It's not going to change anything. So I'm going to stop resisting that. I'm going to stop being angry with that. And maybe if you can stop being angry with that, you can even start thinking in a way that maybe you can look at your experience in a different way and say, yes, it was very painful, but what have I learned in dependence on that painful experience? If you have experienced something really deeply painful in your life, and you have struggled with that again and again and again, often you learn a lot about yourself, about your mind. Your wisdom increases, your compassion increases, you have less pride in your mind. Maybe you can let go of the anger, so you have more patience in your mind. So a lot of positive qualities can arise in dependence upon painful experiences. That doesn't make them okay, but for some experiences we have no choice, right? We just get them on our plate and we have to deal with that. So then it's up to us to either fight the experience and try not to feel it and go over and over and over it again with our anger and with our resentment, or we can say, I feel it, ouch, that really hurts. And you stay with the experience and you work through the experience. And while you work through it, while you allow yourself to feel it in all its aspects, you get a lot of information about life, an aspect of life, and I always have the feeling a lot of wisdom comes with that. So we're going to do a meditation on forgiveness to give ourselves a chance to learn how to let go of the past. It already has happened, Not forgiving in the sense that I'm going to forgive you, but I'm going to forgive in the sense that I'm going to let go. So often we feel hurt because our needs are not met. And I think that the most basic needs for us human beings is that we have a need for belonging and we have a need to be loved unconditionally. And if these needs are not met, we feel disconnected from ourselves and we feel disconnected from our community. And I think that disconnection comes because we have not allowed the experience to fully arise in our mind. And we are reacting with aversion and anger to that experience. And I think that disconnection is what really, really hurts. If we react with anger to our unmet needs, I think we disconnect even further. We turn away from that need. So if we want to heal, if we want to take care of ourselves in a good way, if we want to become the best version of ourselves, we need to connect, reconnect with ourselves and with our needs for belonging and love. And so as a little child, we were fully dependent upon others, especially our parents, for these needs of love and belonging. We couldn't love ourselves. We didn't, it's like you learn to love yourself in dependence upon others. But as adults, we are safe with ourselves. So we can learn to love ourselves unconditionally. We can learn to belong to ourselves, feel whole in ourselves. And if we then can connect with others, coming from that place, then we come from a place that we want to give to others. We're not going to go to others because we are needy, because they have to tell us that we are good enough, they have to tell us that we deserve to be loved. We go to others with a feeling of, I am whole, I'm totally fine the way I am. What can I do for you? How can I be of benefit to you? And I think when we can do that, we become real adults. Emotionally, we are not little children anymore. And so then we become very different human beings, who can actively contribute to society in a positive way. That's where we want to go. Okay. So we're going to do the meditation on forgiveness, and tomorrow we talk about resistance to experiencing unpleasant feelings. Forgiveness is one way of doing it, but we look into other ways of being with the resistance and how we can let go. And then we're going to look a little bit into how we can incorporate a practice of self-compassion within the practice of Tonglen, which is one of the top practices in the Mahayana mind training. How can we incorporate this self-compassion, what we have done over the last 5 days, into that practice? All right. So I'm going to look tonight or tomorrow again at your questions. If you have more questions, feel free to send them, and I will try to incorporate them into the teaching tomorrow. Okay. I will not be able to go through all your questions. I can't, but as far as they are contributing to or related to the topic, I will do as much as I can. All right. And I apologize for me not being capable of doing everything, Okay, you ready for the meditation? So find a comfortable position. And give yourself a few minutes to connect with your body and to let go of everything that you have heard. Don't try to hold on to anything. You will be able to find that information later if you need to. But for now, you just let go. Forgiveness means giving up the hope for a better past. It means giving up the hope that we can change the past. It means acknowledging what has happened and moving on. So when we practice forgiveness, we start with ourselves. And we can think, there are many ways that I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed myself. I have abandoned myself. I've let myself down. Many times in thought, word, or deed, knowingly and unknowingly. For all the ways I have caused myself to suffer through action or inaction, out of fear, pain, and confusion. I now extend full and heartfelt forgiveness to myself. I forgive myself for not being the way I wanted me to be. I forgive myself and I set myself free. And you can repeat certain phrases that work for you. You can repeat them in your mind. I forgive myself and I set myself free. And then you can call to mind a situation that needs forgiveness. And while you have that situation in mind, you repeat, I forgive myself for not being the way I wanted me to be. I forgive myself and I set myself free. And then we can think about forgiveness from others. There are many ways that I've hurt and harmed others. I have betrayed or abandoned them, caused them suffering knowingly and unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, out of my pain, fear, anger, and confusion. I forgive myself for not being the way I wanted to be. I forgive myself and I set myself free. And if you feel the need, you can also ask for forgiveness from those you have harmed or hurt. Please forgive me for not being the way you wanted me to be. Please forgive me and set me free. And you can visualize that the other person grants you this request and sets you free. And then call to mind a situation that needs forgiveness. A situation in which you have hurt or harmed others. And while you call that to mind, you can repeat in your mind, I forgive myself for not being the way I wanted to be. I forgive myself and I set myself free. And if you feel the need to be forgiven by others, you can say, please forgive me for not being the way you wanted me to be. Please forgive me and set me free. And you visualize that your request is granted. And then we practice forgiveness for those who have hurt or harmed us. And there are many ways that I have been hurt and harmed by others, abused or abandoned, knowingly and unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, in thought, word, or deed. I remember the many ways others have hurt, wounded, or harmed me out of their fear, pain, confusion, and anger. I have carried this pain in my heart long enough. I am willing to let go. I am willing to forgive you. To you who have caused me harm, I forgive you and set you free. And then call to mind a situation in which others have hurt or harmed you, and that you feel willing to forgive. Spend some time thinking, I forgive you for not being the way I wanted you to be. I forgive you and I set you free. And if you feel that you're holding on to something with anger, resentment, aversion, you might want to repeat a meditation like this every day for a while. Sometimes we are so used to holding on to that it is not easy to let go. So we need to practice letting go, setting free. And then we can dedicate all the merits that we have gathered today by listening, reflecting, meditating, developing our wisdom mind, developing our compassion for the benefit and the happiness of all sentient beings. Thank you very much for having been here today. And tomorrow we have our last session out of this series of 6. So I hope to see you then so that we can conclude it and you have the whole package to help you develop more self-compassion. Okay, see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.